Good day, learners. I'm Ray Gapuz. I'm a test preparations coach for the last 25 years, and I've been doing coaching classes for NCLEX RN, both here in the Philippines and internationally. I'm also an author of 2 test preparations guidebooks for the NCLEX RN, which are internationally published. My Western and my Eastern education has enabled me to come up with guidelines, which I call functional concepts. And these concepts are the ones that are helping nurses to deconstruct questions on the NCLEX RN. So I'd like to share with you some of these functional concepts as we engage in our learning sessions today. So today we'll be talking about antipsychotics and how do they help patients with schizophrenia. Let's begin. Here's a sample question related to this concept. The typical antipsychotics are used to treat which of the following symptoms of schizophrenia? For you to be able to answer this question, you have to know what are the 2 general types of antipsychotics. You have typical antipsychotics and atypical antipsychotics. How do they differ? They differ in terms of their target symptoms. Typical antipsychotics primarily targets the positive symptoms of schizophrenia, whereas atypical antipsychotics targets both the positive and the negative symptoms of schizophrenia. In essence, your atypical antipsychotics are more encompassing in terms of the target symptoms because it deals with both the positive and the negative symptoms of schizophrenia. Unlike your typical antipsychotics, they just actually would treat the positive symptoms. So in essence, they leave the negative symptoms still present in the patient. So let's have a basic recall of what schizophrenia is. The exact cause is unknown. In the older times, it's called splitting of the mind, and this is characterized by complete disintegration of the personality, specifically its components, the ego, and the superego. Some believe that there's a genetic link to schizophrenia, while some believe that it's associated with the increase in dopamine in the brain. So with that, we need to regulate the amount of dopamine by giving psychotropic drugs. Okay? So for you to be able to answer this question, we need several functional concepts. Functional concept, what's a functional concept? It could be a word, a phrase, or a sentence that serves as a guide for you to deconstruct the question properly. And for this question, our first functional concept would be typical antipsychotics include your haloperidol, fluphenazine, chlorpromazine, thyroidazine. So haloperidol or haldol, fluphenazine or prolixine, chlorpromazine or thorazine, and thyroidazine or melaril. These are a group of the most commonly prescribed antipsychotics, which are clustered under the category typical. Okay. We also have atypical antipsychotics. These are clozapine or clozaril, risperidone or risperdal, aripiprazole or abilify, quetiapine or seroquel, olanzapine or Zyprexa, and ziprasidone or Geodon. Now, pay particular attention that your atypical antipsychotics are used to treat both positive and negative symptoms of schizophrenia. Now, let's have a recall. The positive symptoms of schizophrenia are those that indicate change in the behavior or thoughts of the patient, including delusions, hallucinations, looseness of association, agitation, word salad, ambivalence, or confused thoughts. Now, if we're going to relate this to your typical antipsychotics, your positive symptoms are the target symptoms for typical antipsychotics, such that we could say that haloperidol or haldol would decrease delusions, hallucinations, looseness of association, agitation, word salad, ambivalence, and confused thoughts. Because your typical antipsychotics are used to treat the positive symptoms of schizophrenia. Now, moving on. Another functional concept. Negative symptoms of schizophrenia refer to loss of previously existing functions, including anhedonia, asociality, avolition, apathy, and alogia. Now, you have to remember that your atypical antipsychotics are used to treat both positive and negative symptoms of schizophrenia, such that your clozapine or clozaril could be used to decrease both the positive and the negative symptoms of schizophrenia, specifically your anhedonia, asociality, avolition, apathy, and alogia. And of course, the positive symptoms we mentioned a while back. Now, let's go back to the question. The typical antipsychotics are used to treat which of the following symptoms of schizophrenia? The key word here is the word typical. So it has to remind you that when you see the word typical before the term antipsychotics, you have to remember positive symptoms of schizophrenia. So if we talk about positive symptoms of schizophrenia, are we okay with delusions? Yes. Hallucinations? Yes. Alogia, the absence or lack of speech, is actually a negative symptom. So we put an X. Anhedonia, lack of interest in pleasurable things, and this could lead to social withdrawal. So that's a negative symptom. Remember, this is targeted by your atypical antipsychotics, so not typical antipsychotics. So we put an X. Agitation, even if it begins with letter A, this is anxiety with restlessness. It's one of the positive symptoms of schizophrenia, which is the target of your typical antipsychotic. So we put a check. Word salad is actually a positive symptom of schizophrenia. Word salad is extremely disorganized speech or writing. And avolition, or the lack of motivation or decrease in motivation to initiate the performance of self-directed purposeful activities. Once again, this is a negative symptom of schizophrenia and is the target symptom of atypical antipsychotics and not typical antipsychotics. So we put an X. Therefore, the target symptoms of typical antipsychotics are options 1 and 2, delusions and hallucinations, and options 5 and 6, agitation and word salad. So don't forget to remember how your typical antipsychotics and atypical antipsychotics differ from each other. So typical antipsychotics would just be directed towards treating the positive symptoms of schizophrenia, whereas atypical antipsychotics could be used to treat both your positive and negative symptoms of schizophrenia. So we can therefore say that in patients who are taking typical antipsychotics, the negative symptoms may not be addressed by that classification of drugs, such that the delusions could go away, the hallucinations could go away, but if they're just taking your typical antipsychotics, the alogia, the anhedonia, the avolition, as well the asociality and the apathy could remain. Okay, so this is my shout out time. Congratulations to one of our NCLEX RN passers from Apari, Cagayan. We have Robert Ruma Pagulayan. He passed the NCLEX RN for the state of New York. Congratulations, Robert. So let's learn together. For more instructional videos, subscribe to my YouTube channel, Gapuz Mentors, and my Facebook page, Mentor Ray. If you have anything in mind that you want me to cover in my future videos, or if you're confused with some concepts and you want clarifications, please feel free to send me a note or a message through my email, mentor.raygapuz@gmail.com, and let's learn together. Disclaimer: the instructional tool is created to enable students to develop their test-taking skills. The question or questions and answers contained in this instructional video were patterned after the official publicly accessed samples from the RN test plan of the National Council of State Boards of Nursing, or NCSBN. The discussions and rationale presented in the video are based on the lecturer's research and are meant to provide an explanation for the answer or answers to the question or questions that is or are presented. The lecturer makes no claim, directly, implied, or otherwise, that the rationale discussed is officially endorsed by NCSBN.